They say love makes you blind. In my case, it sharpened my vision, just in time to see the dagger before it landed. My name is Aiden Cross, and this isn't a story about a broken heart. It's about betrayal, laced with wedding vows and ambition wrapped in a kiss. From the outside, we were perfect. Every investor who walked into our glass-walled office said the same thing. You two are a power couple. Soulmates in business and life. I smiled every time I heard it. So did she. Juliet, my wife, had that rare kind of charm that made people forget to ask questions. She was brilliant in meetings, bold on stage, graceful at every event. They all said she completed me. For a long time, I believed them. We'd spent 5 years building our company together. MindForge, a mental wellness platform powered by AI. It was designed to offer tools for resilience and reflection. For me, it was personal. Every line of code, every user flow, every ethical protocol, I wrote it. And Juliet? She was the face. Media, PR, investor pitches, she sold the vision while I built the engine. We didn't just share a bed, we shared equity. But perfect facades hide the deepest cracks. It started small. A suspicious email from a competitor pitching features eerily similar to something I'd barely begun prototyping. Weeks later, a confidential pitch deck leaked online, one we had shown in confidence to a potential partner. At first, I blamed cybersecurity. Then, I blamed myself. Eventually, I considered the unthinkable. No, I told myself, not her. But suspicion is like a quiet cough. It starts small and never goes away. One night, around 1:30 a.m., I went to the office, expecting it to be empty. We had a big deadline coming up, and I wanted to tweak some back-end logic. Instead, I found Juliet, alone, in a dimly lit boardroom, on a video call. She didn't hear me walk in. Her voice was different. Not warm. Not professional. Strategic. Calculated. Like she was reporting to someone. I froze. On the screen, a shadowy figure. No name. Just a silhouette. MindForge will enter phase 2 in 2 months, she said. I'll make sure you get the integration specs before Aiden even sees them. Before I see them? I slipped back into the shadows and left without a word. I didn't sleep that night, and I didn't confront her. Because I knew, if I did, she'd bury every piece of evidence. And I wasn't ready to lose. If Juliet was playing a game, I'd rewrite the rules. Let her believe she was winning. The next morning, I handed her a coffee like nothing had happened. She walked into the kitchen barefoot, yawning in one of my t-shirts. Her face glowed, too innocent. Morning, love, she said, kissing my cheek. You were up late. Debugging, I smiled. One of those nights. I looked her dead in the eyes. Saw nothing. No guilt. No flinch. She was good. Too good. But I was awake now. Every word she said, every silence, I read between the lines. I watched her like a suspect. I knew if I confronted her too early, she'd spin the story. Make me doubt. Make me look unstable. I couldn't give her that power. So I started building my own story. My first move was quiet. I created a decoy project on our internal server. A fake product, just enough code to look real. I named it Project Halosphere, clean branding, big promises. An AI-powered neural journal, completely fictional. Then I built internal documentation, spec sheets, interface mockups, even fabricated investor interest. It looked golden. And like bait in still water, I waited to see who would bite. 3 days later, she did. I was asleep on the couch when her phone buzzed in the kitchen. A small window. I took it. The screen previewed the message. Is this the integration file for Halosphere? Just want to make sure I have the right one for Monday's demo. Screenshot. Phone back. Silent. Now I had proof. But I wanted more. Next came phase 2. Make her feel powerful. I started looping her into more technical meetings. Asked her opinion where I never had before. She loved it, being the strategist, the insider. She started spending more time at the office, helping. I watched her play the perfect wife, the model co-founder. I watched her send emails when she thought no one was looking. And I started forwarding those emails to a secure server outside our network. And I kept smiling. At this point, I had enough to go to the board. Enough to destroy her publicly. But I didn't want to. Not yet. See, I didn't just want to expose her. I wanted her to feel it unravel. So I let the rope out. I began dropping hints during our late-night talks. What if we merged with a competitor? What if MindForge pivoted to enterprise clients? Each time, I saw the spark in her eyes. She nodded, offered thoughts, always a little too eager. She thought I was laying the groundwork for her next move. She was wrong. She didn't control the board anymore. She didn't control me. I had already hired a private investigator, Brooks Carter, former intelligence, corporate surveillance expert, discreet, expensive, Every message Juliet sent, every call she made, every business dinner was tracked. Every folder she touched, every mistake that wasn't a mistake. The closer she thought she was to victory, the more exposed she became. All I had to do was wait. Trust doesn't break in one moment. It erodes, quietly, gradually, until all that's left is silence and suspicion. I could have ended things the night I caught Juliet on that call. Could have brought the board the screenshots, the server logs, the message from the competitor. But that wouldn't have been enough, not for someone like her. To truly bring down someone who thrives on deception, you don't just catch them. You invite them in deeper. Make them feel safe. Make them feel brilliant. Let them believe they're winning. Then you close the trap. At the end of that week, I told Juliet I wanted her to lead our next investor roundtable. It was risky, but necessary. This isn't just another funding call, I told her. You've got the charisma, and we need to show we're still a team. She smiled like a queen receiving her crown. I've been waiting for this. Of course she had. Behind the curtain, I began coordinating with Brooks, my investigator. His trail had led to a name I didn't recognize, Stonebrick Capital. On paper, a boutique firm. In practice, a front. A front for my largest rival, Nexagon. 2 years ago, Nexagon tried to buy us. We said no. Since then, they'd been playing dirty, poaching our talent, mimicking our features, spreading rumors in investor circles. Now it all made sense. Juliet wasn't acting alone. She was being paid. And not just for inside info. Her job was to destabilize me, to create just enough doubt in the boardroom that they'd vote to sell. Low valuation. Controlled collapse. Nexagon picks up Mindforge for pennies, rebrands it, and erases me from the story. And Juliet? She walks away with a payout and a future in someone else's empire. She had already started laying the groundwork, planting seeds about my burnout, making subtle comments about fresh vision during meetings, holding private chats with key investors. It wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was tactical dismantling. But now I knew. And still, I said nothing. Instead, I praised her more. Let her interrupt me in strategy sessions. Gave her the spotlight, the credit. Every time she thought she was in control, I smiled. Every time she thought she was manipulating me, I watched. I needed her to feel invincible. Then I made the move she never expected. I called a private board session, off the calendar, under the radar. Told them I had concerns about sensitive data security and asked for permission to run a quiet internal audit. No names, no accusations, just evidence. I showed them screenshots, timestamped access logs, anomalies in file movement. Enough to raise eyebrows, not enough to spark panic. Lucas Drake, our board president, leaned back in his chair. If you're right, he said slowly, this is massive. If you're not, I'm not wrong, I said. That night, I mapped out the final play. A strategic presentation, pitched as a company roadmap reveal. We'd invite key investors, board members, a few tech reporters. A big, curated crowd. Juliet and I would present together as co-founders. She said yes without hesitation. Her eyes sparkled. She had no idea what was coming. I didn't pick a standard venue. No conference room. No hotel ballroom. I chose the Meridian Gallery. Modern, minimalist. White walls, black floors, skylights that poured in light. A stage where every breath mattered. Every silence, a statement. Juliet loved it. It's elegant. Dramatic, she said during our walkthrough, sipping wine. We're going to take their breath away. She was right. Just not in the way she thought. Over the next 3 weeks, I set the board. The guest list included not just supporters, but those aligned with her. People who believed in her charm, who might back her if she ever made a move against me. They needed to be there. Front row. Then came the presentation slides. We agreed to split the content. She'd do the vision. I'd do the architecture and execution plan. I sent her my slides ahead of time. But they were doctored, strategically flawed. Inconsistent data. Outdated figures. Obsolete jargon. A digital tripwire. If she leaked them, I'd know. And 3 days later, I did. A Nexagon exec posted a leaked roadmap in a closed investor forum, slide for slide. That was strike 7. Meanwhile, Brooks handed me the final piece. Video of Juliet meeting with a Stonebrick Capital rep on a rooftop bar. Laughter. Handshakes. A flash drive changing hands. Timestamped. Legally recorded. Ironclad. My legal team reviewed the case. It was airtight. And still, I said nothing. Juliet kept rehearsing her speech. Picking outfits. Smiling. She had no idea. She thought the night would end in applause. It wouldn't. The morning of the presentation arrived quiet. Too quiet. I stood alone in the Meridian Gallery, watching sunlight crawl across the polished floors. Everything was in place, catering lined up, lighting tested, press stations ready. My assistant handed me a checklist. I nodded without looking. My mind wasn't on logistics. It was on what was coming next. Juliet arrived at 9:17 a.m. on the dot, punctual as ever. She wore a custom charcoal gray dress, camera-ready, confident. She moved like someone who owned the room before it filled. "Morning, partner," she said, handing me a coffee. "Big day," I replied with a calm smile. "Nervous?" "Not at all," I lied. By 10 o'clock, guests began arriving, investors, journalists, board members. I greeted them with handshakes and polite nods. My heart was steady, my breathing slow. No anger, no sadness, just clarity. I had done the work. The stage was set. Juliet floated through the crowd like she was born to do it, laughing, charming, captivating. No one suspected a thing. No one except maybe Lucas Drake. He caught my eye from across the room, gave me a slow nod. He knew something was about to break. The show would start at 11 o'clock. Juliet would go first. Backstage, behind the black curtain, we stood side by side, waiting for the host to cue us. "I've got a good feeling," she whispered, her voice soft but sure. I looked at her, just for a second, and for the briefest moment, I remembered something midnight brainstorming sessions, her head on my shoulder during red-eye flights, the day we launched Mindforge and she cried in my arms. I let the memory pass. "You always do," I said. She walked on stage to warm applause. The lights embraced her. She spoke with confidence about innovation, legacy, the mission behind Mindforge. Her voice was steady, her timing flawless. She had rehearsed every word, but more than that, she believed in her performance. It was her best one yet, and it would be her last. She finished to respectful claps, turned to invite me up. I joined her, my steps echoing in the hushed gallery. The air had shifted. Even the lights seemed quieter. "What we've built with Mindforge," I began, "is more than a product. It's a promise. A promise rooted in trust, transparency, and truth. And today, in honor of those values, I want to talk about what happens when that trust is tested." A small flicker crossed Juliet's face. Barely visible, but I saw it. I clicked the remote. The screen behind us changed, not to our roadmap, but to a blurry image, a rooftop bar. Two figures, one handing the other a USB drive. Murmurs rippled through the room. Click. A clearer image. Juliet's profile. The flash drive visible in her fingers. A sharp inhale from somewhere in the audience. Juliet turned toward me. Her voice faltered. "Aiden." I raised my hand. The lights dimmed. A short video played 42 seconds. Just enough. The rooftop exchange. The timestamp. The handshake. No edits. No commentary. Just evidence. When the lights came back on, the gallery was silent. I turned to face them. This is what happens when ambition crosses into betrayal. When someone uses trust as a weapon. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I presented. Like I always had, with logic and proof. No one clapped. No one moved. Juliet didn't speak. She stood still, eyes darting like she was searching for an escape hatch. But there wasn't one. Just the truth. 17 seconds passed before the room reacted. One investor stood up and left without a word. A blogger snapped 2 photos before being ushered aside. Our general counsel leaned in to whisper to Lucas Drake, whose face had gone pale. "And Juliet?" She looked lost, like a traveler in the wrong city. She turned to me one more time, her voice a whisper. "We can talk about this." "I already did," I said. "You just didn't listen." And then I stepped off the stage. There was no sense of victory. No music in my head. No imaginary confetti falling. Just stillness. A weight sliding off my shoulders. Behind the curtain, I didn't linger. I didn't glance back. I didn't need to. The gallery was unraveling behind me, conversations muttered in tight circles, board members shuffling toward exits, reporters quietly filing quotes. The energy was no longer electric. It was fractured. Everyone had seen what I needed them to see. Now they had to live with it. Lucas Drake found me by the untouched catering table. Rows of champagne glasses lined up like props from a party that had never begun. He spoke quietly. "Emergency board session tonight," he said. "She won't be in it." I nodded. She never really was. He started to say something more, then stopped, giving me a firm pat on the shoulder before slipping away into the dispersing crowd. Juliet tried to reach me that night. She called. She texted. She showed up at our loft. I didn't answer. I didn't open the door. I didn't speak a word. Eventually, the knocking stopped, but the silence didn't last long. By morning, the story had broken wide open. One of the reporters, ignoring our no-recording policy, had leaked the video to a tech blog. The headline read, "Startup Queen Unmasked. Mindforge co-founder caught in corporate espionage." It spread like wildfire. Within hours, hashtags started trending. Hashtag mindfraud. Hashtag trustfall. Hashtag Juliet exposed. Nexagon, for their part, issued a bland denial. "We categorically deny any unauthorized collaboration with Mindforge personnel." Translation, "You're radioactive now. We're done with you." By midday, her company email was deactivated. Access revoked. Her speaking spot at the Women in Tech Summit vanished from the event site like it had never been there. The board moved fast. That night, during the emergency session, I laid out everything. Brooks's surveillance reports, the manipulated file leaks, the timeline. I presented it like any other pitch. Just the facts. Bulletproof. There was no debate. No pushback. No sympathy. By unanimous vote, Juliet was removed from all corporate roles and stripped of her equity under the clause for malicious compromise of confidential company data. It was legal. It was final. It was done in one signature. She wouldn't get a dime. No severance. No buyout. That night, I sat in my car across from our old office. The lights were out upstairs. I wondered if she was crying. Not out of guilt. Juliet had never cried for the right reasons. No, she'd be mourning herself, the life she planned to steal. The narrative where I was the obstacle rather than the author. My phone buzzed again. "Juliet, please, just talk to me. You don't understand. I never meant for it to go this far." I stared at the message. For a long time. Then I deleted it. And her number. And finally, her name from my contacts. The weight slipped off my chest like a chain I hadn't realized I'd been dragging. And just like that, she was gone. By the end of the week, her name had become toxic. Investors quietly distanced themselves. Press outlets pulled glowing features. Former partners scrubbed her photo from old blog posts. Even her alma mater removed her name from the notable alumni section of their website. She didn't fight back. Not publicly. She just vanished. The designer coats, the curated online persona, the inspiring quotes about leadership, all gone. Her accounts fell silent. No posts. No defenses. No cryptic affirmations. But the silence spoke volumes. I didn't look for updates. But some things find you. And in turn forwarded me a screenshot. Juliet had reached out to them from a personal account, asking if anyone still believed in her. A friend at a VC firm told me she showed up uninvited to a pitch night, only to be quietly asked to leave. The same people who once praised her wouldn't make eye contact now. Because it wasn't just betrayal. It was illusion. They had trusted an image. An image carefully built, on my code, my vision, my back. As for me, I gave no interviews. No public statements. No revenge tour. I worked. Because Mindforge didn't just need to survive. It needed to heal. And so did I. In the weeks that followed, I dove into the work. Not just the code or the roadmap, but the culture. Mindforge had been poisoned by the shadow of Juliet's charm. Her voice still echoed in our halls. Not in words, but in hesitation. Meetings were quieter. Conversations carried an edge. People were waiting, for my reaction, for a cue on how to move forward. I didn't want to rebuild the company. I needed to rebuild the people inside it. So I started by fixing the silence. I reorganized the leadership team, promoting those who had been overlooked. I brought decisions out of closed doors and into daylight. Then I launched something simple but radical, a weekly open Q&A. No scripts, no PR buffers, just me, a microphone, and any question they wanted to throw at me. Why didn't you say anything sooner? Did you see the signs? Why do we trust her? I answered them all. Honestly, directly. I admitted where I'd failed, where I'd let charisma cloud my judgment, where I'd prioritized peace over scrutiny. We talked about trust, about power, about how easy it is for someone magnetic to make others question their own instincts. But more importantly, we talked about what came next. We weren't just a company anymore. We were a case study. And we had two choices: become a cautionary tale or a blueprint for integrity. We chose the second. The next version of Mindforge didn't roll out with fanfare. No flashy launch event, no viral campaign. We took our time, stripped everything back to the core, rebuilt from the principles we'd once scribbled on a whiteboard 5 years ago when it was just an idea between two idealists. The result? Fewer users, but more engaged. Fewer investors, but more committed. Fewer headlines, but better ones. We weren't loud. We were solid. And in that stillness, something unexpected happened. I began to remember who I was before her. I started painting again. Not for galleries or portfolios. Just for myself. It had been years since I picked up a brush. Since before the startup, before the spotlight. I opened an old sketchbook one Saturday morning just to scribble something down. 6 hours passed. I hadn't noticed. For the first time in ages, time didn't feel like something chasing me. Eventually, I took a break, just a small one. Drove north, along the coast, and ended up in a quiet seaside town called Harbor Point. It had a single main street, a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and sea salt, and cliffs that caught the wind like they were listening. I rented a room above the bakery. No laptop, no meetings, just paper, ink, and long walks along the edge of the ocean. I wasn't running away from her memory. I was remembering who I was without it. Back in the city, weeks later, a journalist reached out, someone I respected. She wanted to write a piece called How to Lead After Betrayal. She'd followed Mindford's rebirth, respected our transparency, and thought my story could inspire. I turned her down, not because I had something to hide, but because it wasn't about the betrayal anymore. It was about what came after. Some things grow better when they're off camera. I never said Juliet's name again, not in public, not in interviews, not out of bitterness, but because she didn't deserve a chapter in a story that no longer belonged to her. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I saw her again. Nearly a year had passed, maybe more. I hadn't kept track. I hadn't needed to. I was walking through the downtown book fair with a colleague, discussing a new literacy initiative tied to AI emotional processing, when something caught my eye. A small booth wedged between two major publishers, humble, quiet. The name on the banner stopped me cold. V. Cross, Narrative Therapy Journals. There she was. Juliet, or rather, Vivian now, based on the booth sign, stood behind the folding table, leafing through a stack of handmade leather journals. Her hair was shorter. Her clothes simple, unbranded. Her hands fidgeted with the corner of a book like they weren't quite sure what to do. She looked up, saw me, and froze. We didn't speak right away. Just stood there, across a small river of strangers and paperback racks, not as enemies or ex-partners, but as people who once shared everything and now shared only silence. Then, slowly, she nodded. I returned the nod, and for a moment, that was enough. You look different, she finally said, her voice quiet, unsure. So do you, I replied. There was no tension in my voice, no sharpness in hers, just distance. Like two actors from a play long closed, bumping into each other on a quiet street. Is Mindforge still doing well? She asked. It is, I said. It's grounded now. Focused. She smiled. Not big. Just enough that I could see some part of her was relieved. Maybe to know it survived. Maybe because part of her, once, had believed in it too. The silence came next. That kind of silence where every word you could say threatens to dig up 100 doors you already chose to leave shut. She didn't apologize. Didn't ask for another chance. Didn't try to explain the past. Instead, she reached under the table and pulled out a journal, brown leather, hand-stitched, aged slightly at the corners. I made this the week after the gallery, she said. Thought you might want it. I took it. Not as a symbol. Not as forgiveness. Just because. I'm not asking for anything, she added quickly. Just wanted you to know. I never blamed you for how it ended. I looked her in the eyes for the first time in what felt like lifetimes. And what I saw wasn't the woman who betrayed me. It was someone who finally understood the weight of what she'd lost. Take care, Juliet, I said, softly. You too, Aiden. And that was it. No grand goodbye. No dramatic walk away. Just the quiet parting of two people who had learned, the hard way, how fragile trust really is. I left without looking back. Not out of pride. Not out of strength. But because, for the first time in years, I didn't need to carry her anymore. I didn't open the journal right away. For days it sat untouched on the edge of my desk, its leather cover catching the afternoon sun like it was waiting for permission. I didn't give it. Not yet. I wasn't sure what I expected to find inside. Apologies, explanations, rationalizations. Maybe just blank pages and the illusion of closure. Eventually, curiosity won. Late one night, after another round of interface reviews and a quiet dinner alone, I poured a glass of whiskey and flipped it open. There was only one entry, written in her unmistakable handwriting, neat, slanted, deliberate. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could outrun the truth, but the truth always catches up. Even when you lie to yourself. That was it. No signature. No date. Just that. And on the final page, a scribbled address. A town on the far side of the country. Small. Forgettable. A place she clearly hadn't meant anyone to find unless they really wanted to. I closed the book. Didn't turn another page. Didn't write back. Didn't need to. Some endings don't ask for answers. They ask for space. Juliet, or Vivian, or whoever she was trying to become, wasn't part of my life anymore. But that journal? It was a reminder of how close everything had come to falling apart. How quickly charm can mask corrosion. I stored it in a drawer and got back to work. That year, MindForge launched what would become its most acclaimed update, Core Resilience 3.0. It was tighter, smarter, not just reactive, but preemptive, capable of guiding users through layered emotional states with customized AI reflection paths. It was everything we'd promised in those early days, only now, real. We didn't shout about it. No launch party, no PR blitz. Just a quiet rollout and a user base that had waited patiently. Our numbers weren't explosive, but they were steady. Retention doubled. User feedback turned from interesting concept to lifesaver. And internally, we'd never been more solid. Trust had become our metric. Transparency, our brand. I started hearing laughter again in meetings. People challenged each other without fear. Engineers shared half-baked ideas without worrying about who'd steal the credit. We were no longer a company afraid of its own reflection. We were a team. Outside of work, I found a rhythm again. Saturday mornings spent painting, not pitching. I started visiting the same coffee shop each week, reading paperbacks with no agenda. I signed up for a hiking group, not because I needed the exercise, but because I missed seeing faces without screens between us. Peace had a shape now. And it wasn't silence, it was clarity. One evening, I revisited the Meridian Gallery. The space had changed. New exhibit, new layout. But as I walked the polished floors, something stopped me. At the far wall, tucked between two vibrant abstract pieces, was a single painting. Muted, stark, familiar. It was one of the 5 I had commissioned for our final event. Though artistic installations I'd hung without telling Juliet their real meaning. They had been removed after the fallout, cleaned away like everything else from that night. But one had stayed. Its title plaque still read, "The Empty Crown." The gallery owner noticed me staring and walked over. "No one ever claimed that one," he said. "It just stayed, like it belonged." I didn't correct him. "Leave it up," I said quietly, because it did belong. It was a symbol, not of revenge, but of reality, of the cost of forgetting what power is supposed to serve, of what's left when illusions die. Back at the office, I set a new tradition. Every year, on the anniversary of MindForge's founding, I give a talk, not about growth or metrics, but about mistakes, about vigilance, about how trust, once broken, leaves cracks even when repaired. And I always end the same way. The future isn't built by pretending the past didn't happen. It's built by choosing who we want to be after. The team calls it Founders Day. I never correct them, even though now, I'm the only one left. Because maybe that's the point. You don't need 2 people to be a founder. Just one who refuses to let a legacy rot from the inside out. A year after the fallout, I found myself standing once again at the edge of Harbor Point, watching the tide slip in and out like breath. The cliffs were the same, the sky just as wide, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't there to escape anymore. I was there to reflect. The journal Juliet had given me still sat in my desk drawer, unopened since that first night. I never reread the entry. I never looked up the address. And I never once searched her name online. Not out of hatred, not out of fear, but because the story was finished. Back in the city, MindForge was thriving not as a startup, but as a steady, trusted platform. No more hype, no more headlines. Just honest work from a team that believed in the product and in each other. That was enough. Then one afternoon, at a quiet speaking event on ethical AI, someone approached me. A woman, middle-aged, thoughtful. She introduced herself not as an investor, not as a reporter, but as a therapist. "I've been using MindForge with my clients," she said. "It's helped them speak truths they couldn't voice before." One of them gave me this. She handed me a softcover journal. It looked handmade, the title printed modestly. Narrative Repair, Stories We Tell to Heal, by V. Cross. I didn't open it. Not then. But I kept it. Weeks later, I found myself at another conference, this time in a quieter corner of the city, one for independent writers and mental health advocates. And tucked between booths for mindfulness apps and nonprofit publishers, there was a name on a canvas sign that paused my breath. V. Cross, Narrative Therapy Journals. There she was. Again. No cameras. No entourage. Just a folding table, a small stack of self-bound books, and the same quiet composure she'd worn at the book fair. Our eyes met. She didn't flinch this time. Neither did I. We didn't speak right away. We didn't need to. It was all there, in the calm, in the distance, in the unspoken knowledge that we were no longer those people anymore. I heard about the new version, she said eventually, voice low but steady. 3.0. People say it's changing lives. Not just people, I said. Teams. Families. And Yemi. She smiled, genuinely. Not as a performance. Just as a person. We stood there for a moment, surrounded by strangers and soft background music, and I realized something. There was no pain. No longing. No weight. Just a clean space between two people who had once built something beautiful and then burned it down. I'm glad you kept building, she said. I'm glad you started writing, I replied. And that was it. No need for more. I walked away not with closure, but with confirmation. That I was whole again. That she wasn't the villain anymore, just a chapter I'd turned. And as I left that hall, journal in hand, one phrase echoed in my mind. You don't rebuild by dragging ruins behind you. You start again. With open hands. And a blank page.